Okay. So, we already have some questions. Yay. Can you guys hear me well? Let me know if there's any problems with the audio, because sometimes that happens. If you are watching the replay or you are new here, we are here every week, 11:30 a.m. California time on Thursdays. Got my tea, sweet tea. Okay, so A is here again. Welcome back. Could you say 5 to 6 sentences with vocal fry with uptalk, origin, sense, and region? I don't know what that last part means. Origin, sense, and region. Can you clarify that? And let me know that you're still here, just to make sure, since this was already here before I started. I don't know if maybe you stepped away. So I'll talk about that once you confirm that you are here. Otherwise, we are waiting for more people to come. So, see if we have any good comments recently. Comments. Okay. Why is that a stupid thing? How did that one disappear? I see a comment from Steve here that did not show up. So if Steve comes today, I can explain that. Oh boy. Okay. Yep, that's that one. That's fine. I think that one. That's fine. Okay. Anyway. Hello. Gabriel's here. Good morning. Yes. Almost the afternoon here, though. Purpose to use. Okay, so I see A is here now. Thank you for confirming your presence. Purpose to use. Origin. Is that related to the origin, sense, region thing? Because I don't know what you mean by that. Who, use, and where. Okay, so vocal fry and uptalk are two things that are in no way required. Vocal fry is fairly common in American English. You don't have to do it. It's not part of the language. Uptalk also it's something that will sound very annoying to a lot of people, but there are quite a few people who use it. I kind of just used it there a little bit. And sometimes it's hard to tell uptalk from just regular intonation. So it really doesn't matter that much. Uptalk is usually when it's like it's repetitive, right? So if I say like uptalk is usually when it's like really repetitive, and you just keep kind of going up when it's inappropriate to go up, and that's just kind of just the way that you speak. And it doesn't have to be necessarily that extreme, but I think I actually probably have a little bit of uptalk. Uptalk is probably very big in certain areas of California, especially around Silicon Valley. I've also heard it's very common in some parts of New Mexico, probably also in Arizona a bit. So there's various places around. Like it doesn't matter. It really doesn't matter. I don't recommend in any way trying to use uptalk. I don't recommend trying to use the vocal fry. I mean, if you want to sound like that, then go for it. But there's absolutely no reason to. It's something that I would completely ignore and is not important at all. And okay, so I see you say purpose to use. There is no purpose. it's purposeless, it's meaningless. It's two things that can happen in the speech of some people. There's no real use for it. I mean, I guess if I think about it, for the vocal fry, maybe if you get really deep and you're trying to sound kind of creepy, right? It's not normal speech. It's like, yes, come to me, yes, something like that. Then it sounds kind of creepy. It sounds deeper, like you're the Emperor from Star Wars, or a Sith Lord or something. Like you're a bad guy. So, but that's a special creative use. That's just manipulating your voice to sound, a certain way. And technically, it's using the vocal fry, but like, I would just completely ignore vocal fry and uptalk. Don't even care about it. There's hello, welcome. I came early this time. I'm usually too late. Well, good. Now you're here. So if you have questions, now's the time to ask them. Because you have plenty of time. I don't know if Steve is here. What? Oh, yeah, okay. Published. Boy. Anyway. Anything? Come on, guys. We gotta get the ball rolling. I'm looking at comments, recent comments, trying to find something useful. These ones that I haven't responded to. Recently posted about the held stop and glottal stop. I do have some interesting insight for you guys and new things that I've realized and that I'm going to be making videos on. I can talk about that. Blah, 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 blah. You're welcome, A. So I want to use this. Let's see. I guess I can't take that exact example. Such a good example, though. I want to talk about rhythm. And there's actually, I realize that there's a special key to English speech, especially American English speech. It affects the rhythm, the sounds, the stress. It affects everything. And there's a couple different pieces to it, but I can talk about that if you guys want. I'm going to be making a lesson on that, obviously. But we can go over that. Just let me know. Easy. Is the second E the same? Y in long way Macmillan hasn't played special symbol for the second E. Because people are stupid. It's the same sound, yes. A Y at the end is just an E sound. One thing that I've realized, the more experience I get with English pronunciation and looking at sometimes the ways that other people do things and transcribe things and all this stuff, the more I realize that there's a lot within our own language that we don't even perceive. Like, for example, using the instead of the, so the dental D replacement for the TH. Most natives are not even aware that they do that. And if you tell them that they do that, they'll say you're wrong, because they're just doing a TH sound. But also, there's more than one way to look at something. And I mean, that's valid. Different people look at things differently, and there's not necessarily one right answer. So some people, right, because there is a difference technically between the E, the first E and the second E. They're the same sound, but the difference would mostly be the length, right? The stress and the length and the loudness, because we know the stress is on the first syllable, E, so it's easy, easy, easy. So the second one comes down. It's possible that maybe we don't completely get back into the E position, but it's still an E sound. It's still there. But we're not saying like easy, 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 because then that's stress. That breaks the stress of the word. So they're not going to sound 100% exactly the same because of the difference in stress, which also affects the length, because the length and loudness is tied to the stress. So me, I would see no reason. I would just think that it's pointless and it's more confusing to mark that as a different thing, like to use a different symbol. Because if we're going to go that route, there's all kinds of weird little things like, okay, we're going to have a different symbol for like a stressed E and an unstressed E, a stressed I and an unstressed I, a stressed A and an unstressed A. Like, and maybe they have their reasoning for doing that. I don't know, but it's, to me, it's just like splitting hairs. There's no reason to do that. Easy, 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 easy. We can get, especially because that second E is not stressed. As I said, we might not get completely into E. We can get a little lazy with it to where it can sound like we're still going to recognize it as an E. But if you actually pick it out, you could clearly hear that it's not quite the exact same quality. It's not like the exact type of E in the first one. So if I get really lazy with the second part and I say like easy, easy, z, e, 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 and in comparison, oh, now it sounds like two different sounds. But that second sound doesn't actually exist in English. That's why we can get lazy with it, and it's still understood as E. This is still the same sound, because it's still within the same range of what we would identify as the same sound. Whereas like the line between E and I, right, there's a line there that we start hearing one or the other. So that's what I would say. I don't know, maybe people try to separate out things that don't need to be separated and make distinctions that don't need to be made. But there's, if you change the vowel to the I from sit, you kind of say, is it? For a beginner, that might be a nightmare like it was for me. Like an easy, if you change the E, the ease in easy to is, so it'd be like is it, is it, is it, is it? I mean, it sounds like is it without a T, like you're dropping the T. Yeah, I mean, I guess it would sound like that. But most English learners, when they start learning English, they don't even hear the difference between E and I. So they're probably going to hear E anyway. And the stop too, because a beginner doesn't usually hear any sound there. So it's just is it, yeah, exactly. Well, technically with a stop, there is no sound. That's why it's a stop. But it's stopping in the position of what would be pushed out that basically creates the illusion of the sound, and we interpret it to be there, as opposed to dropping it where there's nothing there at all. What's vocal fry? Vocal fry is, so if I'm talking kind of like this, right, where there's this, right, there's this sort of like grainy quality to my voice. This is a vocal fry. Some people speak like this. I think I naturally have a little bit of vocal fry just in my normal speech. And many Americans do. It's not required. It's not going to make you sound more American or anything like that. It's just a thing that exists. And I'm sure it exists in other languages too. It's some people just speak that way, like whatever. So there's like some people have higher voices, some people have lower voices. This is just how it is. Any other questions, guys? Come on, let's keep it going. Keep it going. Waiting for something to go through here. Got some good comments, got some questions, blah, 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 blah. That was last live. Still hoping Steve shows up. I never responded to his comment because it got lost. And then we have another person talking about the schwa. Somebody trying to pick apart my explanations, apparently. Hello, David. Pretty good. Glad you're here. Doing better. Nice. That's always good. Driving lessons. Yay. Work and personal mess have been keeping me busy. Look forward to hitting up on Patreon soon and explaining everything that's going on. Cool. Sounds good. Have you had some major breakthroughs in regards to your ADHD appointments? Yes and no. I'm not really going to go too much into it, but I'm currently doing something and we'll see if it works. And if it doesn't, then we're going to try something else. We'll just put it that way. So there's progress being made, but it's going to take the next couple months or so. Probably by the end of the year, I'll know if what I'm doing now is working, and if not, then we'll try something else. So, I mean, I can explain it more on Patreon if you want, but I don't want to get into the details here. But anyway, yeah. Any questions, David? Any words you want me to pronounce? Like always. Always. Pretty sure this guy is trying to teach me how phonetics works. Oh my God. Yeah, he's confusing reductions for something else. Ugh. Anyway, I have a bit of a mess in one of my comments, apparently. I think I ran into a member of the phonetics police. So that'll be fun. I think I'm having trouble pronouncing sounds like ol, owl, because in Portuguese, u and l have the same sound. Oh yeah, that's right. Legal. Yeah. Which I always find very interesting. That's really cool. Help me intertwine these sounds. Yeah, okay. So good word there, intertwine. So there's an easy way and there's a hard way. I have a lesson, well, 2 lessons talking about the L-colored vowels, like with examples. And 2 or 3, yeah, it was 2 because I did the second half of the monophonics plus the diphthongs. Okay, for ol, owl, and ool, there's two things that you can do, and this makes it easier. Okay. Now, the first thing I'm going to say, of course, we need to get the component parts. So if you can't do O, if you can't do ow, if you can't do oo, you got to start there. I assume you can do those. And then if you can't do the ul, the half L, then of course you need that as well, because we need our starting and our end point. Now, the easy way to do this is to actually treat it almost like it's two syllables. Okay, don't actually stretch it out. It's not like oh wool. Like that's no. But you can sort of put a small W between them, because this is another reason why I say the half L is a vowel sound. Because even though it's supposed to be an L-colored version, which we can do ol, owl, ul, okay? You can make them into like a diphthong blended sound. But you can also, and we will commonly do this, it's whichever one comes out, it doesn't matter. We will commonly treat it like O plus ul, not as two completely separate sounds like two syllables, but with just this small little W between them. And so you're not actually blending them into a diphthong. You're getting the O a little bit more complete, and then that small little W is there for you to link into the ul. So it would be kind of like if I said go last or something. According to the rules, right, the rules, this L should be a full L, but Americans like to break the L rules more often than not, and we tend to just use the half L vowel regardless of where it is. So I could say like go last, go last, go last. Just go last. And we don't really, our brains sort of separate out the words, and we don't really hear that as like goal, right? Goal. But a similar thing can happen. So when you say oh like cold, right? You can blend it. Oh. You start on that O, the lips are already out. Oh, and it's going to close a bit. You're going to go to the ul position. Oh. Or if you link with this small W, oh. So there's still a little bit of blending, but it's not an immediate transition. Like when we do R, for example, the L colored ah, there's an immediate, it's not like R, it's R. We immediately, as soon as the sound ah starts, it starts going into so there's not actually a separate ah there. But here you can pull them apart a little bit. Ol. So it sounds kind of like something kind of like it's almost like there's a little schwa in there. I wouldn't say that there's a schwa in there. We're not saying oh well, right? But it's kind of like that. Like there's just this little extra oh well. So hopefully that helps you to conceptualize it, to think about it. Same thing with owl, right? Because the end of ow is also that small W. It's almost a full W position. So OWL is itself a word, right? It's a bird, owl. So you can say owl. And if you try to blend it, as soon as I start bringing the lips around, right? Ow. Okay, my tongue is going to start going into the ul if I'm blending them, right? So instead of ow, ul, it's ow. Okay, but if I sort of pull them apart a little bit and get that small W link, owl. So I don't start bringing that half L until maybe I get around here rather than up here. Ow. Okay, so it's just you're starting that half L a little bit sooner if you're trying to blend them together. And then ul, same thing. So if I blend them, ul, like cool, right? Cool, ul. Lips are, of course, part of it. We need that going. Ul. Or I could say cool. So you hear that ooh there. Coo. It's not fully formed yet. It's not ul, right? It's like half formed. Coo. And then you start bringing that tongue up if you're going to try to pull them apart. Cool. And then we get sort of that little W between. And then again, if you're going to blend them, cool. So there's no oo, like partially formed. You immediately start hearing that L sort of blending into it. Ooh, 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 ooh. Cool, blended. Cool, not blended. So that can help you maybe get it a little bit easier. But otherwise, that's all it is. Again, it's just that transition. And if you want to blend them, you just have to immediately start engaging that half L as you're moving through the first sound. So it's sort of like starts here and it morphs into that end position. But of course, the lips are involved too, which makes it difficult. So like, for example, if you were to say in Portuguese, right, there's legal, legal, legal. So it's just like an ooh, right, legal. And I'm probably not saying that perfectly, that's fine. But think of how an English speaker, right? So of course we have what looks the same in English. This would be the word legal, right? Which we use that "ol" there. But let's say if I knew it was pronounced legal, right? Like I just did, like, and I have an English accent instead of legal, legal. Like I say legal, legal. So I'm saying ow, the ow diphthong. Legal, legal. Okay. And then if I want to get a little bit of that L, legal, 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 instead of legal, 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 legal. So that half L just creates a little noise disturbance in the middle of the ow. So instead of just trying to say like legal in Portuguese, you can kind of use that as a reference and try to do ow instead of like ow or whatever it is in Portuguese. Try to get the ow diphthong and then get that half L sort of in the middle of it. Legal, 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 legal. All right. So give yourself an accent in Portuguese, basically. Okay, moving on. Fast speech. What do you do, and what did you do sound the same? So it all depends on the context, right? Hold on, I need to make sure I've got something here. What did you do? Okay, no. If you blend what, okay, if you're gonna say Jew, like what'd you see, right? For example, that has to be did. It has to be past tense. If it's present tense, it would be like what do you see? What do you see? We're not going to blend the like the T and the D or flow into that D and magically change it into a J. But in the case of did, right, we have did and you, and so that second D at the end of did can blend with ya into J, and then we just drop the first part, would you, and it makes it sort of all contracted. But in the present tense, that do is on the opposite side. There's a vowel in between, so they can't actually blend. That's the way I would explain it. But if I say, what'd you see? What'd you do? What'd you want? Okay, that's past tense. That would only be interpreted as what did you see, or whatever. Now, if you use what apostrophe D, which I don't think we really write that, at least not in actual text and texting, like if you're doing it informally, you could do that. But that would be pronounced whatted. So instead of like what did, like what did, it'd just be like a little schwa. What did what did you do? What did you do? What did you do? And again, that would also be past tense. What did, not what do. So in spoken language, this isn't actually an official written contraction. We don't write did contracted with anything. But in speech, you can sort of do, I guess, like a spoken contraction. I wouldn't even necessarily look at it that way for various reasons, but you can. What did you do? What did you do? What did you do? Or you can speak a little faster, and instead of saying what did, you can get that j, drop the first dit part. What'd you? So now the t, d, I sort of disappears. That d mixes with y, and you get j. What'd you do? So maybe it was a typo that you meant to say what did you, in which case, yeah. Then the short answer would be yes. But it doesn't really depend on the context necessarily. It's a faster way to speak. If you say like what'd you do, that can sound a little more informal, but it's basically just a normal, like really fast, extreme contraction of sounds that is very common. Just please don't get down on yourself, okay? And of course, I'll try to distract you from your life with some pronunciation questions. Oh no, yeah, no, I'm actually doing quite well at the moment. So don't worry about that. Still having some trouble focusing. I still have that problem. That hasn't gone away. But otherwise, I'm quite well. I guess better than before. But anyway, yes, I have a video recorder, which, by the way, I should actually tell you guys something. Anybody who knows about end of word devoicing, it's not just at the end of words. I discovered this very recently. So we can talk about that if you are curious to hear more about that, but that's going to be the next lesson. I have some difficulty, why at the end. I have some difficulty with it, this, that, when it's not referring to something specific. Every time I make some comment in some video, I always stop to think if I should use it, this or that. Yeah, that's actually a common problem. It's usually just something I talked early and I mention it now. Something I said early or earlier. I don't know. Anyway, there's not necessarily an easy answer. I think, if I really dug down into it, I could maybe find, some special thing based on, what's going on under the surface. But I think this is one of those points that you kind of just have to get the language into you through lots and lots of input and just build a feel for it. But it's a very common problem. I have advanced speaker students who still make that mistake. Now, right there, I could have said that still make this mistake. I could have used it. One thing I will say, this might help a little bit. So it is it, right? It's a pronoun that just replaces a thing, right? So it's third person singular. It's a thing. Okay. And that could be, an idea. I could say it's interesting. What the thing that happened, right? That could be it. It's not actually a thing. It's an event, right? So whatever, we use it for all kinds of things like that. This and that have a certain feeling, and it kind of depends on how you're thinking about it. This is part of the problem. So if I say, for example, let's say you tell me an idea, right? And I say, oh, that's a good idea. Okay. I wouldn't say this is a good idea. Why? There's a plane outside. Hopefully that's not too much of a problem. Yes, I see you right here, Steve. Yes. The question got lost, and I was hoping you would show up so that I can answer your question here. So I'm going to get to you in a second. So the reason why I wouldn't say this is a good idea is because how it feels, it's your idea. You're the one. It's like you're holding it, right? Like if you're holding I don't know, a hat, right? And then I point to the hat. I say, "That's a cool hat," right? Because you're holding it, not me. So it's the same thing, right? You say the idea, and I say, "Oh, that," pointing to the idea that you have. That is a good idea, right? And so it's not just like physical things, but there's still the same idea of like, this is close to the speaker, that is away from the speaker, that sort of basic idea. Now, notice I just said that sort of basic idea. That, I think, tends to be used more often because we can use it to point to many, many abstract things. Probably the more abstract something is, the more that we're probably going to use that. But it's a very, very difficult point. I don't have an easy answer here, unfortunately. What I would recommend is finding a lot of examples. This is a sort of little hack. Find lots of examples that you know are correct. That is like the same sentence, right? Actually, not that you know is correct. Just find or make sentences, the exact same sentence 3 times using it, using this, and using that. You're going to need to get feedback from somebody. Because you may not know what's correct and what's not, right? And so, find or write these sentences, have somebody like a native, a friend, or find somebody on italki or whatever, have somebody tell you which ones are correct. Sometimes more than one might be correct depending on what we're talking about and what the context is. But tell them like, okay, which ones sound good, which ones don't work. And then keep all that. Don't just like remove the ones that don't work. Sit there and think, okay, why does this work and why does this not work? Okay, like what's the purpose of it in this case? And it's more analytical. It's a little more logic based, which you guys know I like. Not everybody likes that approach, but that's something that you can do to kind of try to hack it and start building the feeling for it. But again, there's no easy answer that I have at the moment. So play with it. My American friend told me not to say either because it sounds uneducated. Wait, this is IPA. I can't read. I don't know what that first symbol is. Is this supposed to be like either? Either. Okay, so, well, there's 2 ways to pronounce that word. One is either, one is either. Either, to me, sounds very educated. Like it's only certain people would probably say it that way. Now, they're both fine, but the feeling or the impression I get is that maybe only very educated people would use either. And also probably people who are kind of like grammar police, that type of person. Where either would definitely be, I think, the more commonly broadly used way. It doesn't sound uneducated in any way. It's just the normal way to say it. So again, I don't really know what that first IPA symbol is. I assume that's the question, either versus either. You can use either one. It doesn't matter. I think some people might use both. In fact, I occasionally might use either. I don't know. I haven't caught myself doing that, but either does. It just feels more common and can't think of the right word, but it feels like the default. Either feels like the default pronunciation to me. But no, neither of those pronunciations are going to sound uneducated. If anybody tells you that one of those sounds uneducated, they're wrong. And they might very well be grammar police. How to train placement, or in this case, pronunciation police, but might as well be the same thing. How to train placement to lower squeaky voice. So there's an A, SQUEAKY, squeaky. That's squeaky. Yeah, we need that silent A there, squeaky. How to train placement to lower. Okay, so I'm glad that somebody brought up placement because so I don't know if you've seen my video on placement. It's not that big of a thing. And in fact, actually, I realized something about placement recently, which I'm going to be making another video on. Mouth placement. So there's voice placement, there's mouth placement, and maybe some people will say these are exactly the same thing. I would disagree. I've realized recently, I still don't think it's the biggest thing in the world, but it is more important than voice placement, like trying to speak from here or whatever, like whatever that means. Mouth placement is like how far or what is your default relaxed tongue position, and how far forward or back does that set your default position, which I know is kind of abstract, but let me try to give you an example. So I'm gonna go in and out of between American English and British English, received pronunciation, proper British. And of course, I'm not an expert on British English, but I'm going to show you some things, and you're going to notice some interesting details, not just with how I sound, but a little bit with my voice as well. It's going to affect the voice slightly. So when I'm normally speaking, you guys are used to this, right? It's going to be this American mouth placement, which is a little bit farther back, it's a little bit more relaxed. It's not like in the throat or anything. Don't think of it like that. It has nothing to do with this. I'm not talking about your throat. I'm not talking about your chest. I'm not talking about your nose. None of that. Forget all that. Just erase that. This is just purely in the mouth based on the default tongue position. So it's a little more relaxed. It's a little bit farther back, kind of. And this it's kind of very open, right? We would say in American English kind of sounds very open compared to a lot of languages and dialects. Now, if I were to do, or try to do, British English, okay, proper British English received pronunciation, and I say, let's see, I need something to say. So I'm going to keep the same mouth placement, okay? So the other day I was walking down the street and I noticed a man, and he told me that it was a lovely day. Okay. Now I'm going to do the same thing. I'm probably not going to say the exact same words because I already forgot what I said, but I'm going to try to shift the sounds forward in my mouth. And I'm going to do that by adding a little extra tension to the back and a little bit into the middle of the tongue, raise it up a little bit, and kind of not really tilt, but it's kind of like almost like it tilts forward a little bit. So the other day I was walking down the street and this man came up to me and he told me it was such a lovely day, right? Again, the sounds probably aren't perfect there. So if I go, again, more relaxed, the other day I saw a man. The other day I saw a man. More forward. The other day I saw a man. The other day I saw a man. Okay. And it's very subtle. It's very, very subtle, which is why it doesn't make that big of a difference. I'm still able to hit all the same sounds that I'm trying to hit. It's just I have this extra default placement, this default tongue tension that sort of sits throughout. So like the ah, if I were to do the ah sound in American English, it gets farther down and back. But if I were to do that same ah in this more forward placement, it's like ah, ah, ah. It doesn't have as much space, right? Ah, 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 ah. But it's the same basic sound. It's just I have a different default placement of where my tongue kind of sits, okay? Now, if I do American English, okay, so I'm going to do American English, again, normally, and then I'm going to try to sort of shift this forward using all the sounds of American English instead. And you're going to notice a very tiny difference. If you don't, it's okay. But some of you, especially like David, should definitely hear a difference. Okay, so here I am normally speaking. So the other day I was walking down the street and I saw a man and he told me it was a lovely day. Okay. If I can do this right. It's kind of hard for me to do. The other day I was walking down the street and I saw a man and he told me it was a very lovely day. Okay, so there's something a little bit different going on with my voice now. It's actually kind of a little bit higher for some reason. And it actually kind of sounds a little dated, almost like it's from the 50s. Like, golly gee, mister, you know. So there's something different going on a little bit with the voice itself, but especially with just like the default placement of the sounds, right? I'm still putting all the sounds in the same places, up, down, tension here, tension here, tension here. This is ah, this is e, whatever it is. I'm still doing all of that. But instead of my tongue being in its normal position, it has this extra little tension through the back, and I'm kind of trying to push everything forward a little bit. And it does have an effect. Now, if your language, like I've learned Russian, apparently does this, because I have a student whose native language is Russian, and we discovered this actually is affecting him. Apparently, I'm not 100% sure on this, but apparently, based off of what he has told me and our work so far, it seems that Russian has a bit more of a forward mouth placement. And right now he's trying to work on sort of shifting that back a little bit. And he hasn't quite gotten it yet, but when he tries to do that, he does sound just that little bit better. And do I think this is going to make or break your accent? No, not at all. Can it, just like with the voice placement or whatever, can it maybe help you make certain sounds a little bit easier? Possibly, yes. Is it going to affect your voice a little bit? Yes. I actually think that the mouth placement is part of the key to the voice placement, and that they're tied together. But again, neither the voice placement nor the mouth placement are a very big deal, I don't think. But the mouth placement would be more important than the voice placement. So to answer your question specifically, how to lower a squeaky voice. If you have a squeaky voice, you don't have a placement problem. You probably have a pitch problem. Okay. So now I can't really do it because my voice is going to break. I can try, but if your voice is really squeaky, if it's up here kind of, or whatever, I don't know, something kind of like that. See, now how am I doing this? I'm not really changing too much with my mouth. I'm not even really changing too much with my voice placement. What I'm doing is I'm raising my pitch. How am I raising my pitch? It's right here. Okay, this is the lever that affects the pitch. Okay, so for guys, it's a little easier because there's this thing that sticks out. We call it the Adam's apple in English, like Adam from Adam and Eve. Right? Adam's apple. Women don't have an Adam's apple usually. They don't really have anything there, so it's just kind of like in the middle of your throat here. Okay. Now, if I try to bring my voice down deeper, I can feel my Adam's apple shift places. And if I try to bring my voice up higher, I can feel it again, shift places. And if I'm speaking kind of normally, right? Remember, in English, the stress, right? If something is stressed, it'll be louder, longer, and usually, not always, usually higher in pitch. And so for an English speaker, this is part of the function of English. Okay, because when we raise our pitch, like I just did, when we raise our pitch, now if I keep speaking up here, it's going to start sounding a little weird. This isn't my normal voice because I'm trying to keep everything higher. But if I emphasize the word raise and I say, if I raise my pitch and I get my pitch up there and then bring it back down, that's perfectly normal. That's part of normal English. So I wouldn't worry about thinking about like, oh, I should speak from here, this, that, or whatever. Throw that out. Focus on the middle of your throat and focus on getting used to using that little switch, that little lever. If I try to come up like this, it kind of raises a bit. If I try to come down here like this, it kind of comes down a little bit. Okay. And then you need to get used to, of course, building that into the stress and all that stuff. Because for an unstressed syllable, it's not that we go down, right? it's a beautiful day. No, like we don't do that. We just kind of go back to like a default wherever your voice rests. And then when we need to stress something, especially if we're emphasizing, then the pitch will kind of come up a bit with it. So it's not just like you're raising the volume and maybe saying the sound a little more clearly with your mouth, but you're also using that lever to bring the pitch up a little bit and back down. So I would focus on that and see what result you get. But if you think your voice is too high in general, then you need to try to get used to having this middle of your throat not be so high. Okay, so try to play with lowering that, raising it, and just get used to holding it at a lower point. Because if I wanted to always speak like this a lot deeper, and I just wanted this to be the normal way that I speak, I'd probably have to think about it a lot and remember to speak this way. But eventually I would probably get used to speaking this way. So, you know, that's all it is. Just like everything else, it's physical mechanics. Yeah. Anyway. Okay, so Steve, yes. We're finally here. Okay, so Steve asked, so go and heart this. Yeah, it got lost for some reason. Like I saw it, and then when I went back, because I got like 5 different things, and I saw yours, and then it, like I guess it got lost somewhere in the thread on my phone, because I usually check it on my phone. And then I looked at this earlier, and I was like, oh yeah, Steve has a question that I never answered. Okay, so can you explain to me what these phrases mean? I heard it in a song and I couldn't find the meaning of these phrases, so you might not understand some. Okay, so 1. I guess I'm gonna have to check these before I say them out loud. She likes everything in marble. I have no idea. The only thing that I can imagine that might mean is like in a house, you can make like the countertops or the floors out of marble, which is a material. And if I'm not mistaken, it's usually a little more expensive. So she likes everything in marble. I mean, so she likes, things to be expensive, I guess. I got bellies in my pox. That doesn't make any, pox isn't even, well, pox is a word, but that it does not apply here. That doesn't make any sense. This phrase makes 0 sense to me. I go through them by the box. Okay, so something that comes in a box, like say if you have candy that you buy in a box or whatever, if you go through them by the box, it means that instead of like, oh, okay, so here's a box of candy, I'm going to eat some now and then, eat some later, and then eventually the box is gone. If you go through something by the box, it means that basically you tend to eat the entire box at one time. It doesn't mean it's all like, blah, but it's like in one sitting, we would say. So, maybe you're watching TV and you're eating, and then the box is empty. Okay, so you went through a whole box in one meal, right? One thing. So that's to go through something by the box, and it doesn't have to be food. It could be anything that comes in a box. Or instead of a box, if it's something else, say it comes in a bag, right? Go through and buy the bag, like a bag of chips. Okay, you eat a whole bag of chips at once. I got your brother in the back throwing bags in. No idea. I mean, throwing bags in, you have bags, you're throwing them into something. But with the first part of that sentence, it doesn't make any sense. Those seem like 2 completely separate ideas, and I have no idea. So yeah, I can't really help you there, unfortunately. And maybe with some extra context, some of these might make sense. That second one, definitely not. I don't think that's ever going to make any sense to me. Like somebody would have to explain it to me, like break it down. The last one, maybe with some more context, but I doubt it. Okay. Busy today. Let's see. So this is somewhat reflective of where my attention is at the moment. What's the most natural way to refer to the 3 pedals under the steering wheel in a car with shift stick manual? Well, I mean, collectively they're the pedals. You have the gas pedal, the brake pedal, and what do we call that? Oh, the clutch. So the pedal that you push in so that you can shift the gears is called the clutch. We don't call it like the clutch pedal. It's just the clutch. So it's a gas pedal, or you could just say the gas, the brake pedal or the brake, and then the clutch. But collectively, they would be the pedals, right? Yes, very good. Personal question. When you took lessons, were you driving a manual car or an automatic transmission? Yes, manual. I learned on a manual, which is actually why I failed my first driving test, even though I can drive extremely well, and I pretty much always have been able to. Because I learned on what was my mom's car, which is a manual, but there was, I don't remember what it was. There was something like wrong with her car or something, and it wasn't available on the day that I had my driver's test. And so I had to use what was my grandma's car at the time, and that was an automatic, and I had never, ever, ever driven an automatic before. Like literally when I sat in the test and the person got in the car to, score me and tell me what to do, that was literally the first time I had ever been inside an automatic car driving. And I barely failed the test because obviously I was a little awkward. I mean, you would think obviously driving an automatic is easier, but because I had literally never done it before that exact moment, the gas was a little more sensitive. And so there's some times where I jerked the car, which obviously doesn't look good on the test. And so, yeah, I failed. Second time I passed it, I was back on the manual car. And actually my mom's current car is also a manual, and I drive that around sometimes. My car is an automatic, unfortunately, because automatics are boring, but it's a car. It's good. Gets you around. So yes, I can drive both, which I think most people can't these days because, of course, most cars are automatic. So it's always nice to be able to, in the zombie apocalypse, I don't have to limit myself to automatic cars. If I find a manual car, I'm taking it. Could you also name the most common types of lights in a car off the top of your head? Headlights, fog lights, etc. Just curious. Okay. I like how you're tying your English into like what you're learning. It's like, that's perfect. Absolutely perfect. But okay, obviously there's the headlights. Fog lights, I think I know what you mean. You mean like the high beams? I'm pretty sure that's what that is, because if it's foggy, we turn the high beams on. So that would be, we would call those high beams, at least in American English. There's the tail lights, also called the brake lights. Two terms for them. It's the red ones in the back, tail lights, brake lights. Inside the car, usually there's something that, like a light you can turn on that's attached to the roof of the car inside, and that would be we often just call it the light. Turn the light on. It's obvious. We're in the car, right? We don't need to call it something specific, but I guess that would be the roof light. Some people might use the word lamp instead of light. Ceiling light. What other lights do we have? We have dashboard lights, kind of, I guess, like the light for the dashboard when it's dark, which the dashboard is the thing that gives you all the information, and the radio and, all that stuff. I think that's about it. What other lights are in a car? Yeah. So, what's the difference between pick at someone and pick on someone? Good question. This is very much rooted in the logic of these two prepositions, or the feeling of them. What is the difference? Okay. Pick on someone. So someone, even the way that I want to explain it, it's going to be kind of confusing because I was going to say someone is your target, but we usually use at with a target. Remember that in, on, and at, and then also at and to. as two separate groups, at to and then at on in. They're very, very closely tied under the surface. They have a very tight relationship, and in, on, and at are really like, if I were to pick just like say three, like what are the top three core prepositions that like build the entire language that everything else is kind of based around? It's in, on, and at. And for a visual of that, in the back of my book, I have the map of the logic of prepositions that you can see visually, and you'll see what I mean. But so sometimes above the surface, especially when we're trying to explain things, we might use certain language that is usually associated with one, like at, to try to explain the other one, like on. And it that's part of the reason why it's kind of confusing, and you really want to go under the surface and build the feeling from there. But pick on, so you're targeting someone, yes, but also notice we say focus on, right? It's there. There's your conscious focus is on a person, right? They're the active thing that your attention is on, right? And of course the pick, right? Pick literally means like to choose. If you have, well, okay, that's going to be pick at. We'll come back to that. Pick means to choose, right? So obviously we're not using the basic literal meaning, but if I pick on someone, it's now like they become, you can look at it as like a positive or active state. Like this is the person that I'm focusing on. I'm going to pick on them. So it's almost sort of like, it doesn't make any sense. It's very abstract. It makes sense under the surface, but as I'm trying to explain it, it doesn't work. Or you can look at them as like a platform, especially because pick on is like, it's like bullying, but sort of very light. Like you might just be teasing them. It doesn't have to be like hardcore, like bullying, like, oh, I'm going to beat you up after school or anything like that. And so it's like they're a platform, and you can even think of it as like you're trying to stand on them, right? Like that's what a bully does, right? You're trying to like push them down because it's a negative thing, right? You're putting some sort of negative pressure onto somebody, whether that's physical, verbal, calling them names, saying, oh, you're stupid or you're ugly or whatever. And this pressure pushes down on them, right? And then the pick would probably be based on the idea that you're selecting this person to focus on instead of somebody else, so you can see how those ideas kind of come together. You select someone and then you put this negative pressure on them. There's different ways to look at it, as I tried to explain, but that's probably the best one. You're putting this negative pressure on them, just like, and that's tied to other things. Like if we say he carries the weight of the world on his shoulders, right? He has all this stress, all these obligations, responsibilities, and they weigh him down. It's not the literal world, obviously, but it's like his world, right? His family, whatever. And he carries on his shoulders. It's like a negative weight that he has to hold up. Otherwise it crushes him, and his family starves or something, because they can't get food, whatever it is. So that idea is we see that idea in other places as well. Pick at. So at is a specific point and or bubble. I couldn't find a specific perfect word, and so those two, specific point and bubble, they kind of work together. It depends on how you're looking at it. For example, if you're at the store, we can see that that's a location. It's a specific point on a map, right? And you could be inside the store, in which case you would specify I'm in the store. But you can also see how, right, if you're in the store, you're still at the store at the same time, right? And so now that store is sort of like a thing around you. It's almost like the location is now a bubble around you in a way. And so in and at can work together like that. But when we pick at someone, I don't think we usually use pick at with someone. We usually pick at something. And off the top of my head, the most common, could even be the only meaning, I don't know, but definitely the most common meaning of pick at would be, let's say I have a wound, right? Let's say my cat, I was playing with my cat scratched me. Okay, ow. And now it's like, it's healing, right? But it's not healed yet. Like you still see it there. And so if I sort of, try to do this, right? I'm like touching it and trying to pull stuff off and stuff. That's picking at the wound, right? So you can see, right, I'm picking, like almost literally like, grabbing something, like I pick up something, right? And it's at, this thing. It's like a target. I'm trying to hit the target, like right there, right? Just like you shoot at a target, right? So these two ideas kind of come together, and you get this idea of, that. And it's really hard to explain what I'm trying to explain here in other words, because pick at is the idea. Like that phrasal verb expresses that idea, and it's really hard to think of a different way to explain it. Pick at someone. Don't pick at me. Don't pick at me. Well, you always pick at him. I can imagine maybe that could be used. It's like it would be related to pick on, but it sounds like random shots, right? Like you take shots at somebody, not like with like a weapon, but it means like you make, jokes about them or whatever, or it's very similar to bullying. But it's a slightly different idea. And like maybe pick at someone could be used that way, but as I said, pick at someone, it doesn't really seem like much of a thing to me, unless maybe I'm just not thinking of the right context. But we definitely associate pick at with something usually, so that's what I would say there. How have you been? Oh, Sergio, yes, hi. Have you been? I have a question about voiced consonant endings. Very good, because this is the next lesson. I've already recorded it. Let's talk about it. Are V and Z devoiced in the word bookshelves? Well, let's see. Bookshelves. Shelves, bookshelves. Okay, so this is actually a special case. Interesting. When we have this sort of VS ending, which is VZ, right? Because the S is going to be a Z sound. Shelves, wolves, leaves, right? What can commonly happen is, okay, usually when we have devoicing, it just affects one. But here we have two voice consonants together. And so what can happen is we'll partially devoice the first one, the V, and then just let the Z be an S. So it would be, it's not bookshelves, although some people might say that particular word that way. That doesn't sound too bad to me. Bookshelves. But there should be a little bit of a V there, and then you can sort of shift into the F, and then just make the Z and S. Bookshelves, shelves, and that's fine. Fully enunciated, super clear would be like bookshelves, with that like V and Z all the way through. Bookshelves. Now, wolves, for example, if you say wolves with a straight F, it kind of sounds a little weird, because wolf would be singular, right, the animal. And then we make the plural by changing it to a V and then adding the Z sound, which is written with an S, wolves. But again, we can do that same sort of thing. So you don't with bookshelves, you can just say a straight F and it doesn't sound too bad. But with wolves, you don't want to do a straight F. You want to start in the V, do that devoicing. And I'm going to have to explain clearly what devoicing actually is. But it would be like wolves. If I slow it down, right? Wolves. So we start in the V, transition to the F, and then just keep the voiceless S going after that. Or leaves, same thing. I don't want to get too much into this, especially since I'm going to be posting that lesson soon. But I do want to mention a couple interesting things. Number one, with devoicing. So for those of you who don't know what devoicing is, right, we have a voiced version of some sounds, some consonant sounds, and we have a voiceless version. It's the same sound, but voiced means you vibrate your vocal cords. Voiceless means you just use air. So the S is voiceless. Right, there's no vibration here, no voice. But if you do the same position, same everything, but you start adding voice, you vibrate. Zzz, zzz, okay, so they're a pair. Many teachers, I assume, since this is a concept that is out there, talk about end of word devoicing. Sergio's question actually had two voiced sounds at the end, and so I was talking about how that may be a little bit special, but commonly there's not going to be the two consonants at the end there. So like if we say, well, I mean, I guess dogs would have two voiced consonants, but one is a stop. Let's say I say raise, for example, raise, R-A-I-S-E, raise. Okay, now fully enunciated is supposed to be a Z sound. Spelled with an S, that's fine, but it's a Z sound. Raise, raise, raise. What you'll commonly hear natives do is say something like raise, raise, and it sounds like an S at the end. But if you do a straight S, it's going to sound like this. Again, spelled with a C, but it's an S sound. We know the spelling is stupid. Race, race, okay? So it's not that you actually devoice the whole thing and change it from the voiced version to the voiceless version. You still have to start in the voiced version, but then you can let that vibration go and let it shift into, like, you hold the same position, but let the vibration go and it'll change into the voiceless version at the end. So it's like a partial devoicing. D again means to remove, so you're removing the voice, right? So raise, no, that's fine. Raise, raise. Did you ask for a raise? Raise, okay. The other thing I want to mention really quick, I actually discovered that it's not just end of word devoicing. It also happens in linking, and it also happens inside words, like the word physical. Okay, and I've tested this. I did some research. I listened to some stuff. I tested it with some people I know. This is true. So, for example, if you say "is it," again, this is a range. It could always come out as the fully enunciated sound, right? If I say raise, maybe there's no little S at the end there. There's no devoicing. This isn't a rule. It's not something you have to do. I don't even think it's going to make you sound more natural. It's not like that big of a deal. Maybe it will make you sound more natural. I don't know, but it's definitely not a rule that you have to do this. Because the fully enunciated version of a sound or a word is always possible. It's just not likely in the flow of normal speech if we have certain things that can happen, like reductions or devoicing or whatever. And so if I say, did you ask for a raise? There might be a little S at the end. There might not be. If I say, is it good? Is it good? You might hear just a straight Z. Is it? Is it? And that's fine. Or you might hear a little tiny bit of an S there. Is it? Is it? Is it? So it's not supposed to be an S. You still have to start in the Z, but a little bit of that S can kind of come in. Is it? Is it? Is it? Okay. So it can happen in linking. Again, it doesn't have to, but it can. And then inside of a word, physical, physical, physical. So we can say phys, z, z, straight Z. That's how it's supposed to be, fully enunciated. We get a little lazy. Physical, 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 physical. So it's not physical, straight S. It's not right. Got to start a little bit of that Z, then you can sort of drop the voice. And again, you don't have to do that, I don't think, to sound natural. You definitely will be perfectly understood if you don't do that, but I don't think you have to do it to sound natural either. Just something to be aware of, because I know that's a question people have, like, why am I hearing, the S when it's supposed to be a Z, or the F when it's supposed to be a V, or whatever it is. So that's why. That can also happen with the stop sounds, by the way, at the end of words. It's a little more complicated, but I'm going to talk about that in the lesson. Okay, men is a very nasal, and with maximum mouth opening is 50% longer than in men. No, there's not any difference in the length. They're both stressed. Length is determined by stress primarily, not by the sound, the particular sound we're talking about. Is a very nasal and with maximum mouth opening. Well, they're both nasal. This is the trick. I've talked about this in the lesson about the truth about a before n and m. All vowels are a little nasal before n and m, and also probably the back end, the ng, right? It's just that we don't really hear it. It doesn't stand out except when we're doing a. Okay. Also, in addition to a, as I talked about in there can be a little bit of raising, whether or not n or m is after. There can be a little bit of raising with the other part of like the middle to the back of the tongue. And that creates further distortion in the sound that would make it sound different than a pure a, right? Between a and or an and n, both of them have a little bit of nasal. I would not say a is very nasal, because that would be like man, man, man. I see a man. It's like, why are you adding so much nasal? It's a little nasal, just like all the other ones. E, I, e. If there's an N after it, there's going to be a little bit of nasal. With maximum mouth opening, that depends on how clearly you're enunciating the word, or especially emphasizing the word. So if let's say you think I see a dog or whatever, and I've said 5 times that it's a man, right? You say, is it a dog? No, it's a man. Okay, I'm probably going to open really, really far. That's true for anything. It's not just that sound, it's for any sound, any vowel sound. Getting it more open, more articulated, again, depends. Like E is, of course, very closed, but we're going to sort of widen the mouth a little bit so that it's more clearly heard in that case instead of opening it more. Very often we will use the lazy a, like just for all as, regardless of if it's before n or not. We more often than not use the lazy a, which is sort of like doing a. It's like the shape of a, but almost from the height of e. So instead of man, I say man, man, instead of man. Okay, that's the lazy a. So the answer to both of your questions would basically be no. Don't get down on yourself. Yes, +1. Definitely. Immigrant Mimo, welcome. In terms of American English, the deeper your voice is, the closer you are to sound more American, but of course you need to have very good pronunciation. Absolutely not. I respect your point about voice placement, and after the video, I stuck to your channel. Oh, okay, cool. Thank you. No, this, okay. It may be true that, relatively speaking, let's say Spanish speakers, right? Because, okay, we know women on average have a higher voice than men. And we could say maybe, for example, Spanish speakers, let's say both men and women are relatively, they speak a little bit higher, a little bit of a lighter voice compared to, say, English or American English or whatever. Or we can say maybe compared to British English, between American English, maybe they have a little bit of a higher voice. We have a little bit of a deeper voice on average. That does not matter at all. It absolutely does not matter at all. If for some reason I decided to start speaking up here and trying to make my voice a bit higher, and this is just the way that I always decided to speak from, so I just combined 2 ideas there. Like if I just always wanted to speak from up here, I don't know why I would want to do this, but I could if I wanted to. And then my voice would just be higher. I don't sound un-American. I just sound like I have a higher voice. Some people have deep voices, some people don't. That's a function of biology. That's again, relatively, maybe between languages or dialect, there's a little bit of a shift up or down, but it's not going to make you sound un-American if you have a higher voice. That's complete nonsense. Now, if your voice is up in your nose, as I talked about before, for many Americans, that will sound probably annoying. But it doesn't necessarily make you sound un-American. Like, So yeah, that's one point that I completely disagree with. Like Americans don't, not all Americans have deep voices, right? I know plenty of people who don't have a deep voice, and that's fine. All right, my second question is about a singing related phenomenon I've definitely touched upon in the past, but I'd like to talk about it more. Yeah. I have 3 songs, specific portions that I like to listen to. Adele, Easy on Me. I didn't get the chance to. David making my life hard. Gotta go look stuff up. Give me work. Okay. Adele, Easy on Me, 444. Headphones on. 444, a long song, a long video. Go for 40. Okay, yeah, I didn't get the chance to. If I'm not mistaken, I think like isn't she like British? I could be wrong. But anyway, yeah. So she's saying like I didn't get the chance. It's singing, unless maybe you're a Southerner, in which case that might be the way you normally say it. I didn't get a chance. But sometimes that happens in singing. It's just a way to play with the word, maybe emphasize it a little bit differently. Strange things happen in music, guys. Remember. Lady Gaga, Bad Romance, a cappella version. Okay. Bad Romance, a cappella. Bad Romance, a cappella. And what was the timestamp? 54 to a minute. 54. Yeah. Lady Gaga really uses this in her singing. Like a lot. She does this thing where she sort of manipulates the sounds, which in the context of singing is perfectly normal and fine in English. It's not anything that seems strange to us. But if you were to try to use that in speech, we're going to be like, what are you saying? And it's not just in like hand and sand. There you notice it. She's saying like hand or sand or whatever, however she was doing it. But she does that on the other words too. Right. The touch of your hand, the touch of your. She's not saying the touch of your hand, the touch, right? So she does that in a lot of words, just like throughout her music. Anyway, yeah, it's kind of part of what gives her sound. I think like it sounds like Lady Gaga. So anyway, not that I listen to a lot of her music, so maybe it's not in every song she sings, but I've noticed that a lot when she sings. Christina Aguilera, Ain't No Other Man. And we're at so many songs. 126. Man, stand. Yeah, also notice that a lot of these end up on not only like stressed words, obviously, likely focus words, but also, especially if there's rhyming, like man, stand, man, plan, it, right? You'll kind of see the same thing happen. Again, partially because it's music. Like we don't say, "Oh, ain't no other man can stand up next to you." Well, maybe somebody might say that. "Ain't no other man on the planet does what you do." Like nobody would say those two lines together in normal speech. It's a song. It's supposed to rhyme. It's supposed to have a certain sound, and so we can manipulate things in strange ways. 126. Let's see. Let's go to 120-ish. Okay. Ain't no the man, ain't no the man, man. Yeah, it's standard singing. Plus in the same song, 138. I got your soul, you got soul, you got class. I got your soul. Yeah, you got soul, you got class. Class sounds slightly funky too. Funky, I think, is a very good way to describe this type of pronouncing words. Yeah, you got soul, you got class. Yeah, it's just a way to play with the sounds. Class. I could even do that in regular speech if I wanted to have a certain effect. Like I wouldn't say like, oh, I got class. I got class. Like it sounds like I'm trying to have a different accent on the word. But if I'm trying to say like, oh yeah, I'm so cool. I got class. That's not the way I normally speak. Like I'm saying it that way to give it a little extra feeling, because whatever. I want to sound cool. I want to sound classy. I got class. So we might break that out of normal speech and play with it that way. But usually that happens in music, not in actual real speech. Like if I say, you got class, I'm not going to change the print and say you got class just because it's that word. No, I'm probably going to say it normally. What I'd like to know is if I wanted to recreate the way all three singers are manipulating their a vowels and the words that use them, the way they're drawing it out, how would I go about it? Follow your ear. Follow your ear and map it to your tongue. That's the best way I can describe it. I know that's very vague. My phone is ringing. Hold on. Oh. Yes, I'm doing my live stream. Probably about 2.
Okay. Before you leave, can you take me to the bank?
Yes.
Just the bank and back, that's all.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. Bye. See you later.
Yeah, good. Okay. Anyway, so the way we usually do it with the a, and I think these are all before n also. So this is really where you can throw that schwa in there, like that sort of type of thing. It doesn't have to be egg, so the a, but it's like man. It's you want to kind of draw it out, make it into a diphthong. You have like a different ending position, which will probably be around the schwa. I can't stand it. Can't stand it. Now, if you do that too much, it's going to sound a little bit like an accent, right? But if you're singing, right, ain't no the man. That's like a focus word, right? I don't know. Just like anything else, play with your tongue. Try to reproduce the sound. Try to get that shifting and that drawing out of the vowel. That's kind of what you're looking for. So I have difficulty pronouncing these words, which sound similar to non-native speakers. Dan, rant, land, lend, ton, tongue, and tong. Ran and rang, and rain. Okay, so dan, rant, land, lend. Common problems between a and e. You just need more ear training on a and e, specifically with like an n after it, because they do have that little bit of nasal. But I would recommend ear training. I don't think I have any specific ear training for like an n with the n sound after them. But it comes down to ear training. Just playing with it, you doing minimal pairs. Ton, tongue, and tongue. I mean, at the end of the day, all of this is ear training, but ton, tongue, and tong. So ton and tongue, ton uses the normal end, tongue uses the back end. And they do sound quite similar. A native will hear the difference. Again, ear training. So you have to compare, like find words like ton and tongue, some and sung, right? Whether it's an M, but it's close enough. M, N, and all sound very similar, so you can throw that in there. Whatever, just find these normal pairs. They don't have to actually be real words necessarily, but compare them. You just have to train your ear to hear the subtle difference between n and ton, ton, tongue, tongue, ton, ton, tongue, tongue. Tong is ah. That's a completely different vowel sound, so that shouldn't even really be a problem. If you're comparing tong and ton, which ton is not a word, then I would see the problem, but that's a completely different vowel sound. Ran and rang. Okay, so some speakers, when you have a before ng, the back end, some speakers will say they'll say they'll say rang, rang, rang. The way that I speak and the way that many people speak is if you have the which should be an before the back end, it changes into the diphthong a, and this can make it a lot easier for you. Now especially because you're focused on the pronouncing instead of the hearing, right? You don't really have to worry too much about because if you're trying to hear the difference, it can be useful to maybe hear, because some people use rang instead. I actually just realized you're talking about pronouncing, not hearing. Duh. Rang is an easy one because you just change it to a. Rang, bang, thank. Same thing. If it's NK, it doesn't matter. So that in the back. Thank, sank, bank, etc., etc. It's just a. Same thing with rang and rain. So there it's a and a, right? But then we have the difference between the ends again, front and back end. So for the pronunciation, if you're at an if you're having difficulty pronouncing those, you need to separate them out. Make sure that you can say them separately without the n after, because it could be the n is causing part of the problem. But this is a very normal, common problem. You just have to find where's the line between and and again, it's more about the pressure, like where you feel the pressure of the tenseness, and a bit about the shape, not necessarily about the height, although the height can help. I have lessons on those sounds that describe all those details. Rant and rant, land and land, same thing. Ton and tongue, it's so it's that. Tong obviously is it's a different sound. And then one for ton, you bring the tongue up here. For tongue, you bring the tongue back up here. N matches t and d, matches k and g. So there shouldn't be any difficulty pronouncing those, I would assume. And it's not like tongue, all right? Or obviously the UE is silent. Same thing, tong. You want to tongue. You just bring back your tongue up. Like you're going to say tog or talk, tongue. You just let it go through the nose. That's it. Yeah. So I don't know what else to say about that. I don't know. If you have any follow-up questions, let me know. But you're welcome, A. Why don't you put a link so that we can speak to you directly? What do you mean? Like have classes? I don't know how you would speak to me directly. But I mean, that's kind of what the chat is. Like, I don't quite understand your question. What is a R-colored vowel? If there's by the way, it should be an R-colored vowel, right? Because it's a consonant in the writing, but we say the name of that letter is R, and R is the R-colored ah. It's a vowel sound. So again, some native speakers are breaking this rule, and it might disappear eventually. But it should be an R-colored vowel, not a R-colored vowel. What is an R-colored vowel? If there's an R after a vowel in a word, is it automatically going to be an R-colored vowel? Okay. Well, for the second question, generally yes, but it depends on how you split some things. Like, for example, name Maria. Maria. Okay, this is just a simple example. There's two ways to say this. You can say it as Maria. Now, that's not R-colored. This is just an example of how it might not always be the same. So it's and then ia, Maria. Or you can say ma with a schwa and then do the R consonant, ria, Maria. There's two ways to say the same thing. So sometimes things like that happen where it can go either way. But I think that usually just happens with the R vowel itself, switching between the vowel and the consonant and replacing, like putting a schwa before it. So generally, I would probably say yes if there's an R after a vowel, unless it's E. Well, see, spelling. I talked about the spelling, right? Usually, E-R-I-R-U-R is just pronounced So just because you see a letter or a vowel and then an R doesn't mean that it's R-colored. It's just Okay. An R-colored vowel. Let's define it, right? What is an R-colored vowel? An R-colored vowel is any vowel aside from because itself is a vowel, right? It's a vowel and a consonant. Any vowel aside from that starts in that vowel sound, e, ah, okay? And then immediately starts shifting position to blend into the ending position. Okay, so it's like transitioning from any vowel that's not into an and then they become like one thing. Okay. Now there's a limited number of R-colored vowels, right? There's ear or air with the e or e, which doesn't matter. Basically the same thing. There's air, R-colored third vowel. There's some people use R-colored fourth vowel, but you don't have to do that. There's R-colored fifth vowel, and there's the R-colored O, which some people, if they don't have the merger, then they will also have R, the R-colored backwards C in IPA. So it depends on exactly what you're looking at. The way I teach it, there's basically the four: ear or air, R, or. Those are the only four you have to worry about. You can also R-color ire, like fire. But you don't actually have to do that. You can link it with a small y, fire. So see, notice if I don't blend it, it's not R-colored. If I say fire, we hear the I, we hear the and it's almost like there's a little y between them. Fire. But if I blend them, fire. Okay, there's no y. It sounds sort of like I'm just moving from all the way up a little bit through and then straight into instead of like two separate sounds. That's what I was talking about earlier, talking to Gabriel about, like, say, ol, instead of blending O into an L-colored O sound, you can put a little small W between ol, so they're not actually completely blended. So the R color is, again, where you're blending those two endpoints. They're technically diphthongs, but it starts outside of an R and ends in the position. But again, remember, you cannot trust the spelling. You cannot, especially for the R sounds, you cannot trust the spelling. There are spelling patterns. For the like I said, E-R-I-R-U-R is, as long as there's no silent E, it's usually just the vowel by itself with no coloring of some other thing. But you cannot trust the spelling for You have to sort of learn what's what and focus on your ears. Okay, so hopefully that answers your question, Steve. Off of and off. Oh, off of. Oh, it was three things. It was like off and off are the same thing. Off of and off are interchangeable, right? Such as jump off the cliff and jump off of the cliff. Which is more common? Are copy off someone and copy off of someone the same? Off the top of my head, or off of the top of my head, both work. I don't think there are any cases where there's a difference. Maybe. But based on your question, it seems to me like you're thinking of these as two separate things. They're not two separate things. Of is naturally attached to off to link it to something else. So we know prepositions connect two things, but sometimes of is used to link a preposition to another thing. Okay, so instead of like the keys are on the table, keys and table are linked by their relationship on, right, on top of the table. Or take it off the table. So it is on the table. I want you to take it off, so it is no longer on the table, right? Or off of the table. The full statement is off of. It's just that we don't have to say of, usually. That's all that's happening. We're just dropping of if we don't say it. So if I say jump off the cliff, I'm just not saying of. That's all that's happening. It's just like when I say, I think he's right. The word that is implied. I think that he's right, to link the two clauses grammatically, but we don't usually say that. We just drop it. So that's all that's happening. We just drop of usually. Now, I can't think of any off the top of my head. I know there are some cases where if you drop of, it doesn't sound good. So the safe thing is just to always say off of. But usually we can drop of. Yeah. My American friend also told me not to use off of because it's redundant. It's not redundant. That doesn't make any sense. Redundant would be when you say the same thing twice, or like you use maybe two different words that mean the same thing. So you're basically saying the same thing twice. So that would be like off, right? Now, maybe based on your pronunciation, like if you asked him, oh, if I say off, then yeah, he would say it's redundant. So maybe make sure you're pronouncing these words correctly. Maybe that's where this problem is coming from. So off is ah plus f, right? The F sound, off. Or of is the schwa plus v. It's a V sound. So make sure that's clear. But in no way is that redundant. I can kind of see maybe why he would say that, but I don't think that's any way an accurate way to describe it. It's not necessarily that it would be redundant. It's just the of is not usually necessary, right? Yeah, it's grammatically correct. It's supposed to be there technically, but that would be like saying, oh, you shouldn't say I think that he's right because that is redundant. Like it's not redundant. It's just we don't have to actually say it. It's implied. So yeah. Can you guess the spelling of a word and be almost no A plus 100? Okay, because you're trying to think like 100. No, it's not actually A and then 100 like this. Nice little point here. This can be said as 100 or 100. Okay. So the and the one mean the same thing. Okay. Not all the time, but A and one can commonly mean the same thing. So when we say 100 or 100, you wouldn't write a 100%. It would just be 100%. This is redundant, right? You basically just said like 100. Now there are some times where maybe we'll say like a 100% chance or something. Yeah, depending, it could happen. But in your sentence, can you guess the spelling of a word and be almost a 100% sure? It doesn't work here, right? Because if I say a chance, it's actually a chance, not a 100. But I'm saying a 100% chance. So that's why A and 100 can work together, because it's a chance. But the 100 itself would be 100. Anyway, So can you be 100% sure of its spelling just by hearing it? The word clutch is completely new to me. I'm a little proud of myself that I was able to write it. Good. Okay, so yeah, can you guess the spelling of a word and be almost 100% sure of its spelling just by hearing it? For a native who has, I would say at least a high school level of education, yes, most likely. Because we know a lot of spelling patterns, but still there's plenty of things that we would have no idea. Like we could guess, or we can think of maybe like 2 or 3 ways that it might be spelled because there are different patterns. So I definitely wouldn't say 100%, almost 100% in most cases. Yeah. Yeah, because like that TCH ending, right? Like if it were just CH, see, do we ever end words in just CH? Can't think of any off the top of my head. But you commonly see that TCH ending at the end, right? It's just the spelling. It's just ch. There's no T there. It's just spelling. The T is spelling. But clutch, watch, hatch, botch, etc. Usually it's TCH. So that's a pattern, right? If I say clutch, well, maybe there's a silent T there. But yeah, good job. Let us asking you to type it down here. Yeah. Oh my god, I'm so far behind now, and I need to open my window because it's hot in here. What's the difference between based on something and based off something? Good question. This is like the worst time of year, where it's hot during the day and cold at night. I hate it. Okay. The difference between based on something and based off something. It depends on the context, but often they are interchangeable. Yes, there are cases where on and off, even though technically they're opposites, can mean exactly the same thing. If you say it's based on a true story, it's based off a true story. Usually in that particular phrase, based on a true story, we use on. It's just a collocation. But if you say it's based off a true story, it's the same meaning. There's no difference. So yeah, maybe there. Now remember, sometimes there's more than one meaning of a particular phrasal verb. And so it could be like, okay, this meaning of based on and this meaning of based off, in this type of context match together. But then this meaning of based off is completely different, So it's not always going to be like a one-to-one thing, but I can't think of another meaning for based on and based off right now. Based on. I make my argument based on facts. I make my argument based off facts. Based off facts. That could still work too. Yeah. I think based on is maybe a little more common. But yeah, they mean the same thing. How do you pronounce? I would try to say panettone. Pretty sure it should be panettone. I'm still working on perfecting my pronunciation of foreign words in English. I subliminally pronounce them in a way I'd say in my mother tongue, should be panettone. I'm not 100% sure on that. Curiosity. Let's see what you say. Apparently, it's supposed to be an E at the end because it comes from Italian. I've never heard this word. I don't know what it is. So I would just be guessing because that seems like a silent E based on English spelling patterns. But apparently, according to the dictionary, that you're supposed to say E at the end, panettone. So I don't know. Trivial question: do Americans sing Christmas songs in front of people's porches like in the movies, or is it an outdated tradition? I think it's mostly outdated. Some people still do that, but at least I assume some people still do that. Maybe it's just in the movies. I don't think. Yeah, no. I think maybe 3 or 4 years ago, we heard someone doing carols. I don't know if they were going from door to door necessarily, but they were like going down the street and singing. There was like a group of them. So some people still do that apparently, but I don't think it's very common. And you're too early for Christmas, sir. Hasn't even been Halloween yet. Come on. Anyway, J is a voice consonant. Yes. But it does sound like a voiceless consonant to Mandarin speakers, especially in fast speech. Like, I want to change my life. And I parked my car in the garage. Okay. Trick. This is a trick. Okay. You're partially hearing right and you're partially hearing wrong. It looks like this is a follow-up. What's the difference between them? I was told, or okay, that's a different question. I was actually talking about this earlier, this end of word devoicing, which is really just devoicing. It doesn't have to be at the end of a word. Again, this will also be in the lesson. I have a couple examples for j. And I'm not going to re-explain what devoicing or end of word devoicing is. You can go back and watch that earlier. But basically, in this case, so the j, again, when we do this devoicing, it's not that we're changing to the voiceless version, which would be ch in this case, the ch sound. It's that we still start in the voiced version, and then we end up dropping the voice, and it sort of kind of transitions from the voiced to the voiceless and ends in the voiceless. So we don't say, I want to change. That would be a voiceless change, which is not a word. I want to change my life. No, it's now if we fully clearly enunciate it the way that it should be perfectly, there's no devoicing. Change, right? But very commonly, especially if the next sound is voiceless, we're going to shift, start in the j and then just let it go into ch. Change. So technically, it actually doesn't transition to ch because the ch is starting in the T going into SH. So it kind of actually transitions into an SH, which is the voiceless version of j, which is the second half of j, starts in D, goes to j. But you get the point. It's like it's transitioning into the what would be the voiceless version, ch. Same thing with garage. Now, garage actually has two possible pronunciations that are perfectly fine for that last sound. You can just use j. You don't have to use the d part and make it j. You can say garage, j. That's easy. And that can also become devoiced into an sh. You can say garage, okay? Or if you use the j pronunciation, which is also fine, whichever one comes out, it doesn't matter. Then again, you devoice, garage. So that's all that is. It's not something you have to do, but it's something that exists. So it seems sort of like the voice. It seems sort of like the voiceless version to you, but it's not. There is a little bit of voicelessness at the end, but it's not the voiceless version of the consonant. Again, if I were to do garage, but with a ch instead of a j, garage. So yeah, it's very different sounding. What's the difference between I was told and I got told? Depending on the context, they might be interchangeable. Yeah, get is super complicated, guys. I was told that's just a basic statement. Like it's the, I guess, the passive voice version, like someone told me. Right? I was told that this is wrong. Okay. It doesn't matter who, but someone told you that, right? If you say I got told I was wrong. How do I explain that? I got told I was wrong. I was told I was wrong. I got told I was wrong. Yeah, again, depending on the context, it can be pretty much interchangeable. Using get here can mean happen. Like it happened that someone told me I was wrong. I got told I was wrong. It's just like a statement of fact. But it can also have another meaning, which sounds confrontational, not necessarily physically, but Like, especially if, like, say you try to be mean to somebody and then they like make you look like a fool or an idiot. Somebody might say, "Oh, you got told," or something like that. And it's a very difficult thing to answer. The key here is you got to go into get. You got to really dig down into get, and get has a logic and a feeling. I've already discovered it. I'm going to be making a verb book in the future, and once I finish the pronunciation course, I might make the series of lessons on get. But yeah, because get also has so many meanings depending on the exact context. This one phrase, I know it has at least two possible meanings and feelings, but it could even have more that I'm just not thinking of. So yeah, they can be interchangeable. Also remember that get can potentially sound more informal depending on the exact context and how you're using it. It's very complicated. Using get here, I got told, that does sound a little more informal. So that would also probably be part of the difference. Is the T in convicted, or after, close to the T in loyalty? Or the one in stop? Good question. I think really we're splitting hairs here, but it's a good question. Okay. So a quick note. Hello, Nathan. How are you? I'm good. Welcome. So again, I have to sort of cut these things off at a particular time now, and we have about 30 minutes, and I'm behind. So yeah, people who just got here, if you want to ask a question or two, go ahead. People who have already been here, please hold the questions because I'm not going to have time to get to them. And if I run out of time, I'm going to run out of time. Like maybe I can go a few minutes over, but I'm going to have to go. So let's try to get to the rest of these here. Is the T in convicted? Okay, so convicted after, yeah, that's the same T basically, which again sounds very similar to a weak D. You can use a weak D and it doesn't really matter that much. It's technically a T. Now, when we say loyalty, see, there's a trick here. Loyalty, 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 loyalty. It's not loyalty, loyalty, loyalty. That would be like a D sound. When we have like convicted, after, these types of things, or stop, it would actually be like in stop. I would say it's the same, because the k, the f, and the s, the s, they kind of weaken the T there, and make it sound kind of like a D, because the weak version of the stops, voiced and voiceless, sound very similar to each other, where it's p, b, k, g, t, d. But in loyalty, there's secondary stress on the T. That's how I would look at to explain it. Usually, like even if it were to flap, right, like a T that would flap, if it gets at least secondary stress, it usually doesn't even flap. It'll actually be a weak T. And sometimes, we can do both. It depends on, if there's a range to that or not. But I've noticed that usually when T is at the start of a syllable that gets secondary stress, it tends to stay a T. And it doesn't sound like a D or a flap or anything. So that's how I would explain that difference there. Convicted after stop, that would all be the same sound, same type of T sound. Do you think of the ED ending in walked as a D or a T? Good question. How do I think of it? I think of it as a D. How do I say it? I say it as a T, because the sound before it is voiceless. So natives will, because we think of it as the ED ending, right? And we have this little thing in our brain that says, okay, the normal way for most verbs to make the past is ED. We don't consciously think of it that way, but it's in there. And so we think of it as a D, but it naturally comes out as a T if the sound before it is voiceless. At least that's my perception. You can ask another native, and maybe they'll say it depends. I don't know. Havda is not a possible pronunciation of hafta, is it? Hafta is what I know. Yeah, havda can work. I have to go. Usually hafta is what happens, which is very strange because normally any sort of linking or effects that happen tend to go from left to right with the flow of the sentence. So like when we say go to, that T changes into a flat D because of the voiced O before it. And because it's to, the preposition to is a little special and we can do things like that. But it usually goes with the flow. Hafta is strange because it's actually going backwards. The voiceless T is changing the voiced V into an F. And again, this is a bit of a special case because it's a very common collocation. But you could do it the other way. Havda. I don't think it's as common, but it does exist. Yes, I have to go. Havda. I have to go. 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 Doesn't matter. The D plus TH in the word width is a bit awkward. Is there a hack here? Not really. You just got to do the D and a TH. If you fully enunciate width. Now this isn't a D that we release like this. It's not width. Okay, it's not gonna be right because you're adding an extra little vowel between it, and that's not the word. So when you release the D, you have to sort of flick your tongue forward towards that TH position. Width or width. So it's a weird combination because of the physical placement of the sounds. Width. I think I talked about this last time too. We could also do the dental version of the TH and just slide from the D into that TH and then push that out. Width. What's the width? Width. Okay. Usually though, we're going to push out that TH because it's clearer. But it is possible. Anyway, how do you link watched and you? Can there be two J sounds? Well, it's not two J sounds because the first one is a ch. It's a CH sound, which is the voiceless j. So can we say watched you? Watched you? See, we're not going to do that because most consonants you can hold and lengthen slightly. Like if there's two L's, you can make it a slightly longer L. If there's two S's, you can make it a slightly longer S. But because the ch and j start in the T and D positions, and they're based off the stops, and then they blend into sh or j. Obviously, we can't really hold the stops either. If I say bat and then time, bat time. Some people describe that as holding the T, which I guess is one way to look at it, but clearly there's a stop there. You can't like S you can hold. You can actually hold that sound and keep it going, where the T, to hold it, you have to sort of like literally hold the stop part and then push out the second T, right? So because of that, the j and the ch, it doesn't matter if it's two j's, two ch's, or a j and a ch and then a ch and a j, any of those combinations with these two sounds, you have to repeat the sound completely. You can't hold it, you can't stop it and then push it out, because it's a mix between a stop position and a non-stop position. And so because of that, we don't blend. We wouldn't blend that D with the Y. This is one case where even though D and Y, especially with U, they can commonly blend into J, this is one case where that wouldn't happen because of the ch before it. It just makes it harder to say, right? Usually, which for you as an English learner, right, something that to us might be easier to say could be harder to say, but from the perspective of a native, usually anything that's harder to say is not the way we're going to go, right? So even though usually it would blend into j, this case wouldn't because it actually makes it more difficult. So watched you. And again, that D is a T because the CH is voiceless, right? So it's not watched you, right? It's watched you. And we get this little TY combination, watched you. So is there a really fast and lazy way of saying, I don't understand this easier? Yes, like I don't understand. There's the key is around don't. You can drop the D and or the first D and understand and the second D and understand. Just drop the D's from understand. Say stand, understand, or say I put the D in there. Understand. But the key is in don't. You cut the I, cut the instead of saying I, you say I. Just cut the diphthong. Just say the first part of it. Don't. Okay. You can flap the D, even though you're not supposed to do this here, but it's very common because don't is a common word for negation. We'll go and flap the D anyway. You can flap the D, drop the T, drop the N, nasalize the O. I don't. I don't. I don't. Now it's not a full on like French like Portuguese like nasal vowel. It's not like I don't. It's not fully through the nose. It's just a bit more nasal than it normally would be. I don't. And you just go into the for under. I don't understand. I don't understand. I don't understand. I don't understand. There you go. That's a really fast and lazy way to do it. Could you please explain again short oo schwa sound? There's no short oo schwa sound. Your video said voice should be at middle of tongue. I'm so well, it's not the voice. It's the position of the sound or the tenseness, the tension of the tongue. The voice just comes from your vocal cords. The short oo schwa sound. I'm not sure what you mean by short oo schwa sound. That doesn't exist in my mind. I guess you're talking about like in book. What I call the high schwa. I'll have to let you clarify that because I'm not completely sure which sound you're talking about. Could you check the song Other Side and Red Hot Chili Peppers at the minute 24 seconds where he says the word bad? I don't believe it's bad. I don't perceive it as being at. It feels different from the way you pronounce it or other people pronounce it. To my foreigner mind, he's making it long. I don't believe it's bead. What's he doing with ah? Even though he's opening his mouth so wide. Okay. I see we have a message held for review here. So you guys can't see this yet. Matthew, if you're still here, he says he's a British native speaker living in New York City. But there's part of this question that seems highly inappropriate. If we were one-on-one, I mean, I guess I would answer this question, but I am going to not show this question. So, yeah. And I don't think you're necessarily trolling, but I'm just not going to show that question. Okay. Okay, Red Hot Chili Peppers, Other Side. Red Hot Chili Peppers. 24 seconds. On the other side. Let's see, 24. Yeah, okay. Okay. Again, this is singing. Singing. He's actually saying it like eh. It's not e, it's eh. So it seems, again, I think it's partially because singing, but he seems to be doing more of that version of which does exist, but it's not like the proper way to do because that's usually before N or M, if I remember right. Anyway, yeah, so it's just because he's singing. If you were to say, right, I don't believe it's bad, because I don't believe it's bad. It's almost a lazy but he's actually more in eh. Why? Because he's singing. I don't know. It's something we can do. It's just a weird singing thing. Orange juice, you can't link the two J's. Correct. Yeah, you have to say j and j. Because if you say orange juice, this is not right. orange juice. I sang that there. Sounds like bed, only elongated. Yes. If that's an I would assume that he's making it in the same, I guess, range as our because it's basically just an maybe that's why it's so hard to distinguish from no, he's not pronouncing I love to know at least singers to modify it so much that they're shifting to or breaking into yeah. I don't know. It's weird. How do you pronounce the D in studying? Is it a real D or a flap D? Well, welcome, Kevin. Cyper Kevin. I don't use the term real D or true D or anything like that because that also doesn't tell us much. There's a strong D, a weak D, a flap D, stop D, and then potentially a dropped D where it just disappears. So let's see. Where is the D? It looks to me like it is at the start of a syllable, right? Don't be confused by the Y, right? It's study, right? It's an E sound. So study. So, okay, so it's at the start of a syllable. Stu is stressed, so the D is not. And it's between two vowels. So that checks all the boxes for a flap. Study. Then you have the "een" at the end, and you have to kind of almost repeat the E instead of holding it because we don't hold vowels. That doesn't work. You can hold consonants, but you can't hold vowels. So we'll actually go E, small little Y, as we just sort of like move the tongue back a little bit and then back into the E. Studying. Now, if for some reason you decide to emphasize the word or really clearly enunciate it, you can shift it more away from the flap and into a normal weak D. Studying, right? I'm studying, please go away. Okay, possible to say it that way, but normally we flap it. Remember, it's a range. It's all a range. I have a couple of foreign words I'd love to hear you say as well. Caprice, I guess. Minestrone. Yeah, that one I know that has an E. Minestrone. Taco. No, that's Spanish. Taco. Yeah, taco. It feels so white. Taco. Salsa. Instead of salsa. Salsa. So we got half L. Sol. Well, L colored A. Salsa. Tapas. So we'll change it to and Z instead of tapas. Mascarpone. I have no idea. Panna cotta. See, we just adapted to fit American pronunciation. Usually. My American friend said, I've seen a couple of times where they're so good at it. Should it be win? Good question. They both work. Technically, it should be in which. But we use that. I mean, it doesn't have to be in writing and it doesn't have to be formal, but we tend to use in which, like in more formal speech or especially formal writing. But in everyday normal speech, when and where, not all the time. This is an interesting case where like they both sound fine to me. But when and where can abstractly be used as a replacement for in which. And it kind of depends on how you're thinking. So like if I say, right, you reach a point in which or at which you can speak fluently, okay? Now, because point, we can think like, okay, an abstract location in your journey of fluency, right? It would be very natural to say you reach a point where, right, even though it's not actually a location. Now, at the same time, in that same context, instead of thinking of it as a point along the journey, like location, abstractly, we can think of it as a time, because obviously you spend a certain amount of time on that journey. And so I can say, well, you reach a point when you can speak fluently. So one, I'm thinking about it in terms of like abstract space. The other, I'm thinking about it in terms of time. And I could use when or where, and they both work because both of those concepts can apply to this context, if that makes sense. I've seen a couple times where they're so good at it. it does seem a little bit weird. Like I would probably say when, but where does sound okay here. I've seen a couple times where they're so good at it. He was probably thinking about the location that he saw them being good at it. Like he was probably thinking of it in terms of space instead of in terms of time. Even though he says a couple times, right? But I can say like, oh, I have been there a couple times, right? So I'm talking about a couple times, but the location, right? So they can coexist. That's what I would assume. Probably just how he was thinking about it. Hello, Emily. Hello, Danielle. Yes. Welcome. Sometimes people are late. That's okay. We still have 14 minutes, and I finally am starting to catch up. Thank you guys for cooperating. Can you replicate the way that this guy said the word weren't in this video? Education reform from... Okay. Timestamp 38. It sounds a little funny to me. Oh. Okay, timestamp 38. So I'm going to go to 35. Oh. So you're saying when he says like, but weren't? That's actually more at like 39 or 40. Yeah. So there's absolutely nothing wrong with the way that he said that. In fact, that's a very clear way to say it without actually pronouncing the T. So he's saying, right, that's were, right? We're getting a little bit of nasal on the because of the N. I said just a little bit of nasal because that happens to all vowels before N. So that's going to make it sound maybe a little bit different than the positive. And then he's stopping that T very solidly, very clearly. Weren't. And he has his intonation kind of travels a little bit because the way that he's speaking, he says, I forget the exact words he says, but something like maybe in a way that they weren't. And so his intonation is kind of like almost pushing that out a little bit more instead of just like weren't. So it's a mix of the intonation and the fact that he's very clearly cutting off that T, and then maybe a little bit of the nasal on the That's probably why it sounds weird to you. How are you? I'm good. Last question for me: is the SPS consonant cluster actually fully articulated by natives in words like wasps, or is there some reduction that may take? I've talked about this so many times, David. Jesus. Yes, you're welcome. So I guess you didn't get the memo. That's okay. Yeah, so it could be SPS, SKS, even STS, which is kind of a little bit different, but similar thing can happen. We will not usually fully articulate them, okay? We're going to do like a light or a half version of those sounds, which means like for the P, it's very easy to illustrate with the P. So if I fully articulate this word, wasps, right? You see my lips close, you see them open back up, there's another S after it, wasps, okay? It's nice and clear, fully articulated. But the way we normally say it is wasps. So the S never actually stops. My lips don't fully close, but because I'm moving in the direction of the P, it creates a subtle little illusion that the P is there. And we just keep going. It allows us to speak a lot faster. Same thing with K. If I say asks, I'm just bringing the tongue up and not fully closing it. Very common. Daniela, does the word question have two different pronunciations? Good question. Question. Yes, it does. Should be question or chun. I think the end could be a schwa. You just say eh. But for I assume you're asking about like that middle part with like that T. Should be a CH, question. But you can get a little lazy with it. Question, and make it more like a S to SH instead of S to CH. I have a question, perfectly fine. And if your question about the word question was not quite what I just talked about, then you can clarify and I'll answer specifically what you were asking about, but I assume it's for that part of the word. How do you tell a restaurant if you have an allergy in an American restaurant? You tell them you have an allergy. So when you're ordering the food, or I mean, if you want to be sure, like, because you don't want to take any chances, like when you first enter the restaurant, or you can even call them on the phone, whatever. I mean, however safe you want to be, I don't know. But usually, what will happen is, you'll probably go sit at your table. When the waiter comes to take your order, right? You say it's I don't know, a seafood allergy, right? You're allergic to seafood, so you just say, tell them. Say, okay, I want this, and say, oh, and I have a seafood allergy. That's it, right? And they'll make sure, right? Tell the cook, okay, make sure that no seafood gets close to this food because he's allergic. That's all it is. You just say, I have a blank allergy. Yeah. Hopefully that helps. Okay, we have a little bit of time left. If you want to get a couple more questions, I can go now. Either way is fine for me, but always got to manage the time, balance the time. I'll give it a minute or two here to see if we want to squeeze out a couple more questions that I can answer. And if not, I'm just going to go. There's so many tabs open. I got like 20 tabs on my browser. But yeah, as I said, new video is in progress. It's recorded. I just have to finish editing it. That's about the devoicing. I will tell you guys, I'm doing this one next because I already told somebody that I was going to be doing this after the previous lesson that I made. But probably after this one of the single biggest, most important and useful videos that you have ever seen anywhere. Yeah, it's going to be big. It's going to be very useful, very important. I realized what I think is the key to like unlocking all of American English pronunciation, because it affects everything, the rhythm, the stress, the sounds. And it's going to be pretty magical. I think you guys are really going to like it. You're going to be like, oh my God. I don't know if anybody else has talked about it. I'm sure they have, but this is going to be my version of it. Is there any difference between lore and folklore? I mean, I think we can use them interchangeably. But I think folklore specifically, like lore, maybe feels a little bit more just like general. Like it's not tied to a particular culture or region. It's just like, oh, this is like the lore, like the mythology, like what was believed or whatever. And the folklore feels kind of a little more narrow or limited. Let's see what the dictionary says. Traditional customs, tales, sayings, dances, or art forms preserved among a people. A branch of knowledge that deals with folklore, an often unsupported notion, story, or saying that is widely circulated. Okay, and then if we just do lore, their body of knowledge or tradition, something that is learned. Yeah, so there's a slight difference between them. Yeah, okay, that makes sense. Because the way that we also use lore now, like say if you play video games and we talk about like the lore of the game, it's sort of like the background world of that game. And so it's kind of like we're starting to use that word in a sort of similar way to folklore. And so that's why I wanted to look them up to be sure. But lore it can still be tradition, but it's more about like the knowledge or learning of like a particular thing, especially like a traditional thing. Could be related to tribes even or whatever, where folklore would probably contain more of like mythologies and beliefs and things instead of just like knowledge, but they're very, very close, very, very similar. That's a good question. Yes, you are a troll, and you are gone. Let's see here. Got another troll, guys. Got another troll. It's good to call before going to the restaurant to avoid cross-contamination, etc. It can happen, right? It's very serious. We have to be careful. Yeah, exactly. That's what I said. Like, I don't really have any allergies, so I've never had to do that, but I imagine you should probably call before. Imagine if people tamper with their own food just to see the restaurant. Or, yeah, I imagine somebody would do that. Is folks a word? Wait, is folks a word's common? What? So anyway, I have some typo here. So folks, right? Like that's. So I think is folks a word like that? I didn't even spell folks right. Should be an L there. Yeah, a word. Okay, that's what I figured. Yeah, because that was really confusing. I was like, there has to be a typo there. Yeah, when you if you use parentheses or something, if you don't have the parentheses, is that parentheses? No, quotations. If you use the quotations or something to mark it out, it makes it easier for us to understand. But yeah, folks is a word. And I mean, it's not the most common word, but it's used. Some people use it, some people don't. It's one of those, I don't want to say idiomatic, but what is it? I keep forgetting that word. Because there's like a dialect. Oh, idiolect. That's it. I think idiolect is like the way a particular person speaks, the words that particular person tends to use and stuff. Some people have it in their idiolect, where they use that word. I don't particularly use that word usually. But yeah, it's kind of like a somewhat informal, kind of a little more playful word for people. Sounds a little less direct in a way. If you say, okay, people, let's get to work. Like, you might hear that. Or if you say, hey, folks, let's get to work. It kind of sounds a little softer, a little less direct. You'll probably commonly hear that maybe in the South, like folks around here don't do that, whatever. Or of course, Porky Pig in the Looney Tunes, right? That's all folks at the end of the thing. I think folks used to be more of a common word back in like the 50s and 60s and stuff. And yeah, it exists. It exists. Any difference between disease and ailment? Ailment sounds a little more fancy. Ailment can also apply to a wider range. We usually think of a disease as something physical, something that infects you, where an ailment, like if you have like, say, a mental health issue, that's an ailment, right? Something that ails you. So yeah, some people don't pronounce the S in words or in the word. That's what I'm talking about. Wait, what? Oh, back up to question. So like question or question, probably with an SH, question. That does not sound like a standard way to say it. I can imagine some people saying it that way, but it sounds kind of uneducated compared to the standard. I wouldn't recommend saying it that way. Keep the S. Yes. Okay, that's about all we have time for. So thank you guys very much. If you have any more questions, of course, come back next week. Leave comments. Look forward to the new video coming out. Hopefully in the next couple days, I should be able to do that. And yeah, have a great week and a good Halloween if you guys celebrate Halloween. I know other people kind of adopted it, so happy Halloween. Bye.